Welcome, my name is Cody Clemenson, and today we are discussing the forest resources of the Turtle Mountain region and what we can do to help sustain this state-listed priority forest for future generations of North Dakotans. Even though we are gathered virtually today, I'd like to take a moment to let each of us reflect on NDSU's Land Acknowledgement Statement to show respect and recognition to the Indigenous people of our community and to understand our place within the history of this land. The Turtle Mountain region is located in north-central North Dakota. It is an outlier of the Missouri Plateau as it is a plateau that rises 800 feet over the surrounding northern drift prairie. Like most of North Dakota, this region was shaped by glaciers. The region is approximately 40 miles east to west and 20 miles north to south, with the area extending into the Canadian province of Manitoba. The increased elevation results in an extra 10 inches of precipitation per year compared to the surrounding plains below, allowing this area to support a native deciduous forest. Hundreds of large, deep wetlands and lakes are present throughout this geologic feature. This geographic region is an upland forest that is dominated by an aspen birch forest ecosystem in the higher elevations, with the foothills consisting of an oak savanna forest ecosystem. Pre-European settlement, this area regularly experienced wildfires that most likely originated on the surrounding prairie. The fires typically only made their way so far up the plateau before they would dissipate out. Occasional lightning strike-produced fires were also recorded in the upper plateau. All of these fires, combined with wind events and other natural occurrences, produced lots of diversity in the overall health of the forest. Based on various reports, the last major wildfire to occur in the region was in the late 1800s. There have been varying amounts of timber harvest since European settlement, with early settlers utilizing the trees from this forest resource for lumber, heating, and other needs. The Turtle Mountain region is and always has maintained two distinctly different forest ecosystems. There's the oak savanna, which is primarily located along the foothills area. This area has much steeper terrain and experienced regular fires that came from the prairie and rangelands below. It mainly consists of a bur oak and green ash overstory with native rangeland grasses in the understory. The other is an upland hardwood forest that is typically found in the upper plateau. This area has gently rolling hills and receives higher precipitation than the surrounding plains area. It typically consists of a mixture of aspen, birch, green ash, box elder, American elm, and bur oak in the overstory, with a mixture of hazel, chokecherry, juneberry, highbush cranberry, dogwood, and willow species in the understory. Various combinations of these trees and shrub species are found throughout the area depending upon a variety of factors. You may find an oak savanna peering forest setting in the upper plateau, but it differs from the oak savanna found along the foothills based on soils and disturbance regimens. The oak savanna forest ecosystem is currently fairly close to what we believe its original state was pre-European settlement, because the ecological role of disturbances in the system was not as significant as on other sites in North Dakota. The main concern is the establishment of sod-forming grasses outcompeting the desirable native understory. With the exception of some destructive grazing practices, the oak component may be considered stable unless some catastrophic events, such as a new pest or disease that attacks oaks, should come into play. The upland hardwood forest ecosystem has changed since European settlement. Many of the ecological processes, such as fire followed by wind events that shaped this forest ecosystem, have been removed or altered. The main species in the canopy of the upland hardwood forest ecosystem is aspen. This species thrives on disturbances that promote new growth that helps reduce the spread of pests and diseases that typically attack over-mature stands. This provides an increased amount of diversity to the whole ecosystem with many different age classes. Currently, there is an increasing rate in the canopy breakup due to overmaturity, but current regeneration rates of aspen remain low due to the thick understory of hazel and other shrub species. With aspen being the dominant species and a pioneer forest species, these processes are all expected, but we are lacking having a climax species or secondary successional species. The threat of losing this forest ecosystem to a forested shrubland is high unless sustainable forest practices are implemented that we can replicate the natural tendencies to which this ecosystem is adapted. Quaking aspen, Populus tremoloides, is a shade-intolerant deciduous tree species native to North Dakota. They are commonly found in the area and reach a mature age between 60 to 90 years old for our area. Mature trees have tended to have high numbers of white trunk rot conchs present and also suffer from hypoxylin canker. Aspen has white to grayish colored bark that is relatively thin in comparison to many other species in our state. This thin bark is easily susceptible to damage from fires and other events which result in the death of the tree above ground, which then stimulates the production of a hormone that triggers suckering from the root system that was protected below ground. This reproductive response producing suckers was naturally occurring from the fires before they were suppressed and during the settlement of the region through the harvesting of trees for building materials and heating homes. Root suckering is the most common way of reproduction in regenerating aspen in its forest system. This type of reproductive response is common in pioneer tree species such as aspen. Since the time of European settlement, there have been varying amounts of timber harvest and management that have occurred in the region. During the early settlement, lots of settlers harvested timber for building their houses and heating their homes. The trend of harvesting firewood has greatly decreased in modern days, where homes are now being heated through other means. The select amount of timber harvested for firewood tends to only be 1 to 2 trees per area, which does not provide enough canopy opening for the sun-loving aspen. In recent times, there have been some timber harvested, but the amount is only a fraction of what the forest can sustainably provide. Furthermore, these harvest plans tended to target stands with merchantable timber value versus over-matured decadent stands. Throughout the 70s to early 2000s, over-matured sites were cleared with a dozer that had a shear cutting blade. These efforts caused rapid sucker development and have helped create new young stands. Some of the issues we have heard about this practice was that it was very unsightly and difficult for someone to harvest the wood that was piled up with all of the dirt and debris, and it took a long time for these piles to fully break down. There also are some occasional fires that occur, and as threatening and difficult as controlling them can be, the after effects do produce great regeneration results. These pictures taken in October of 2021 are from a fire that occurred in the Turtle Mountain area of Waukapa Wildlife Management Area in May of 2021, and we can see the abundant new life and growth in this forest. In 2017, North Dakota Forest Service State Forest Managers and North Dakota Game and Fish purchased a forestry mulcher skid steer attachment as a tool to creating patchwork disturbances as a forestry management option. The attachment is used to clear all of the understory species and drop the large diameter aspen, leaving the highly valuable bur oak as the only remaining trees in the stands. Because the treatment does not create large piles of trees, roots, and soil, firewood harvest is possible from down materials, and if left, the material quickly begins to decompose. A skid steer and attachment are less expensive to obtain and easier to operate and transport from site to site compared to a dozer. These efforts have also been supported through grants from the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. In 2021, the stewardship team built on the success seen on state-owned lands and moved our aspen regeneration program outside of state-owned lands and onto neighboring private land. This is being used as a small demonstration pilot project with landowners already participating in the forest stewardship program and having identified aspen management as a goal for their priority. Using equipment owned by us and operated by NDFS staff, we masticated small patches of decadent aspen stimulating regenerative growth and to mimic the forest fires of the past. This will be a small project we hope we can scale up as landowners interested in participating are connected with outside funding and contractors. From inventories conducted the past few years on North Dakota Forest Service owned lands, we can see that the overstory in this region is slightly overstocked and aspen accounts for 51% of the species inventoried, but accounts for 71% of the basal area. Green ash counts for 30% of the population, but many of these trees are between 0 to 4-inch size classes, and with the threat of emerald ash borer on the horizon, we could be set to lose our 2 leading overstory producing trees. This overstocked rate also stresses the remaining trees and increases the chances of pests and diseases attacking this forest. From these inventories, we also found an average DBH of around 8 inches. By looking at data from tree that were cored and aged from the region, we see these trees are around 30 to 50 years old, showing that the majority of the aspen in this region are starting to reach an over mature age. Plot to plot, these measurements all varied and showed we still have good diversity, but some sites showed some serious decline well below these averages. From the understory data, we see that 82% of the understory species present are hazel. Aspen accounts for only 2%, and the same is with bur oak. 14 other species account for the remaining 15%. This shows that we really do not have equal amounts of diversity in the understory. Controlling the hazel can greatly improve this overall species diversity. We see this when we look at a smaller subsection of canopy-producing trees that were in the understory, that there's a lot more diversity with all of these species. And if we look at just the low shrub species from this data, we see there hazel still dominates, but the other species have about equal representation throughout the remaining shrub species. In our regenerative aspen treatment areas, where we use the forestry mulching attachment, we targeted areas well below the average trees per acre and basal area. These sites showed the major decline in aspen conversion that would not have merchantable lumber. It would transition into a forested shrubland if left idle. Once we conducted the regenerative treatments, we noticed remarkable changes in our understory inventory. We do see that hazel is still the dominant species, but instead of accounting for 82%, it has decreased to 46% 2 years after the treatment, and aspen rose from 2% up to 36%. Aspen also rose from 256 stems per acre to an average of almost 17,000 stems per acre, which is necessary for the long-term sustainability of this species. The Turtle Mountain region is a valued and unique area to North Dakota's forest resource. It is identified as a priority forest, upland forest in the North Dakota Forest Service's Forest Action Plan. Creating a collaborative management plan that engages individuals to become an active member managing their forests will ensure that this precious resource will last for future generations of North Dakotans. If you have any further questions or would like more information about this forest resource, please contact me at the information provided.